Now, here's where I'm going to get to the good news. All right, you ready for the good news? Hypothetically, if the House and the Senate passed Senate 978, if Obama signed it into law, I doubt it will hold up in court, the Supreme Court. And here's why. Are you ready for some good news? Here's the good news. The Supreme Court just recently has already made a ruling on video games in favor of video games. Listen to me very carefully. Last June, there was a Supreme Court case called Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association. There was a California state law that specifically said that the state of California banned all stores, big stores and small stores, from selling violent video games to minors. And if a store or an employee sold, say, Mortal Kombat to a 12-year-old or Grand Theft Auto to a 15 or 16-year-old, they would get a $1,000 fine or up to 2 years in jail. Now, that law has been there in California for a long time. And California said that, oh, it was for the children. What's odd is that it had bipartisan support. You had people on the left saying, well, violence is wrong. We shouldn't have violent video games hurt the children. And the children. I'm sure it had bipartisan support from the far right saying, well, we need to teach morality to the children. This is about moral. We don't want them to play Grand Theft Auto where they're pretending to steal a car and whatnot. Well, the bill, should I say the law, got bipartisan support again. This time against Cousin Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association. The Supreme Court made a 7-2 ruling, which, by the way, 7-2 is quite rare. Most of the time it's 5-4. The Supreme Court made a 7-2 ruling saying, California, it is 100% up to the parents, the store owner, and the video gamer himself, he or she himself, to decide whether or not to play violent video games. They ordered California to get rid of that law. They said that law was unconstitutional. Let me repeat myself. The Supreme Court ruled last week, and they even went so far as to say that video games are now officially considered an addition to the First Amendment. Now, why is that a big deal? Because video games have never been considered a part of the First officially, I should say officially, by law, officially a part of the First Amendment until now. You see, every time we get a new media, whether it's TV, radio, movies, internet, video games, the law itself has to catch up to recognize it as speech. And now the Supreme Court has, in its own words, said that video games qualify severely under the First Amendment because it gives people the freedom of ideas and experience and interactiveness. Now, again, it's up to the parents, though. The Supreme Court said that, say, a 12-year-old bought an R-rated game and the parents caught him, the parents can swat it and ground him and tell him to send it back. But it can still be up to the individual store. Let's say it is a store's policy to not sell a violent video game to a minor. The Supreme Court says that's okay. It's okay for the store to decide whether or not they want to sell a violent video game to a kid, but making it a law, having the government tell businesses what they can and cannot sell, especially under the condition of freedom of speech, was ruled 7-2 unconstitutional, and this happened just last month. So this, my friends, is absolutely amazing. Now, the state of California argued that the games are violent and it would harm the children and exposes them and whatnot. Here is what the Supreme Court's official response to that, and I'm quoting now. California's argument would fare better if there were a long-standing tradition in this country of specifically restricting children's access to depictions of violence, but there is none. Certainly, books we give children to read, or read to them when they're younger, contain no shortage of gore or violence. Grimm's fairy tales, for example, are an example of grim indeed, as her just deserts for trying to poison Snow White. The wicked queen is made to dance in red-hot slippers till she fell to her death on the floor, a sad example of envy and jealousy. The Brothers Grimm has 198 pages. Hansel and Gretel. The witches tried to kill the children, and then the children killed the witch by burning her in an oven. What high schoolers are made to read things from Homer, from Homer's Odyssey, even learn history lessons about the founding, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and so on. Golding's Lord of the Flies is required reading in some schools, and so on. So, here's my point. Here's the good news. The Supreme Court has already told the state of California, you stop that law right now, because video games fall under freedom of speech. So if this bill were to pass, if Obama were to sign it into law, I highly suggest someone, particularly the Angry Joe, the nostalgia critic, the angry video game nerd, and so on, or DSP himself, file a lawsuit immediately, take it to federal court, and see to it that it is repealed. Because you guys need to understand this about the American government. There is, in spite of our... I listened to someone who said this last night. In spite of our incredible stupidity of our government officials, the system itself still can endure, and the system itself can still correct itself. Meaning that all of Congress can say yes to this law. The White House can say yes to this law. But the final word is always to the courts. And even there, if you give it time, it'll be overturned. So that's the good news. Now, I will give you guys this advice. There was another Supreme Court ruling that happened last week, and everybody talked about this Supreme Court ruling, and that was, I don't have the exact name of the case with me, but it was the women of Walmart suing Walmart for discrimination. Now, everybody was upset about this Supreme Court ruling because the Supreme Court didn't even hear the case. They threw the case out. Naturally, everybody was screaming, oh my gosh, the Supreme Court's in the pocket of Walmart. That's not why it happened. What the Supreme Court said, here's what happened, is that the group sued Walmart on behalf of 1.5 million employees. On behalf of 1.5 million female employees. Here's what the Supreme Court realized. They said, yeah, you can't sue on behalf of 1.5 million people. There were people who were in the lawsuit who didn't even know they were in the lawsuit. There were people who were filed who no longer worked for Walmart. The Supreme Court told the people who were suing Walmart, get a more specific case, get a more specific example of discrimination, and so on. Now, why did I bring that up? I'm bringing both of these Supreme Court decisions up. One, to show you that if should this go to court, you need to remind the Supreme Court of Brown versus the Entertainment Association, and how that they have officially already ruled that video games now fall under the First Amendment. In fact, you could call your congressman and senator and point that out. Here is the second thing that I need you to know. We just need one of us to sue, or just a small group of us. Say the nostalgia critic teams up with the angry video game nerd and DSP. But listen to me very carefully. Do not sue on behalf of all gamers, or else the Supreme Court will throw it out just like they did the Walmart case. Now, don't get me wrong, you will be suing on behalf of all of us, but not officially on paper. You gotta be specific. And the angry video game nerd and the nostalgia critic and DSP need to specifically say in court why this law financially hurts them and why it has been a severe setback for them. The court is gonna want to hear specifics. They're not gonna well, we oppose this bill because it's stupid. Yeah, it's stupid, crappy, shitty pants. They're gonna go with Viacom, of course, and so on. So anyway, that's my point. I'm just giving you guys some hypotheticals here. Now, again, I doubt they'll pass it this month, let alone this year, because they've already got a lot on their plate, and as I've pointed out, they should be more concerned about the $14 trillion debt. They should be more concerned about the wars in Libya, Iraq, and Afghanistan. But instead, they're going to focus on taking away our video game streaming, for no reason whatsoever other than the fact that they want to claim they got some work done. You know, a thought occurred to me before I started making this video, and I want to share that with you right now. I really hate to say this, but I'm kind of glad they just did this. I'm kind of glad this has happened. You want to know why? Because in spite of the fact that it's the 4th of July weekend and I was expecting YouTube to be dead, everybody's outside, everybody's on vacation, and instead YouTube has just exploded with this topic, which means they have awakened a sleeping giant. And I'm glad that's happened. And I have just this to say to you guys. 2 words. Stay awake. The old system is fighting back. Again, this is the old system trying to regain. They want you to go back to where you just listen to their reviewers instead of our own reviewers. They want you to go back to just following the mainstream media and not the alternative media, and so on. It's the old system. The old system is dying, and they demand that we come back home, and so on. I'm talking media-wise and internet-wise. And yes, I miss the old system too sometimes. I've told you guys, you've seen my video reviews, how I miss tapes, I miss video stores, I miss things like that. I'm not a big fan of Netflix and whatnot, but I realize it's the changing of the times. There's nothing I can do about it. I have to accept that. So anyway, this has been Volcano Me. Obviously, you're going to have to wait until after July 4th to call your senators and congressmen, but bombard them with emails, and may I make a suggestion that we all do it at the same time. While it's fresh on your mind, just set a little note, July 5th, that's the day after the 4th, that's when government's supposed to reopen again. That is when you should bombard. Now, again, this bill originated from the Minnesota senator, from Amy Klobuchar, sorry, I forgot her name. But that is the senator who introduced this, so you need to focus your emails on her. And also Texas Senator John Cornyn. So just keep those 2 in mind. Anyway, this is Goku 5.